Hello and welcome to another episode of Statford Bridge, Chelsea by the Numbers. And today's number is £55 million plus £5 million. That is the fee that, according to Fabrizio Romano and a number of other people, David Ornstein, I think, was first, that Chelsea have agreed with Brighton for the purchase of Joao Pedro. The funniest part of this deal is that I was streaming when it was announced by David Ornstein, and if you are so inclined, you can watch me crash out about it for 10 minutes and just start talking about pastries. And I did, in fact, go get a pastry. It was delicious. But let's talk about the actual, the full picture of the data and the video, and then we can talk about what I actually think about the transfer. So, from a data perspective, there's a couple things I like and a couple things I don't like. If you look at his stats bomb radar as a striker and his radar for McClockbot combined forward attacking midfielder radar, a couple things stand out. One, the dude is like a legit dribble carry threat. Scores very highly on dribble carry OBV, which is their possession value model, 98th percentile. Very high carries into the box, reasonably high successful dribbles, very high self-created shot percentage. Like, those are all good things in terms of dribbler. The thing that stands out really nicely in the stats bomb data. And this, by the way, I'll plug this because this is where I got this from. The Transfer Flow, Ted Knutson, Kim McCauley have a newsletter that they talk about transfers basically every day. And this was from their Joao Pedro piece, and that's where I lifted it from. But there's really good stuff in there, so I'd highly recommend it. And StatsBomb is by far the highest data quality of the stuff you can find. And the other thing that stands out, very high possession adjusted pressures. This is a very Brighton thing, less about him, and you'll see when we get to the video. But he is an active and willing presser. The pass OBV, we see it in the XA, we see it in the assists, we see it in the open play shots created for others. He's a very, very skilled passer for his position. That's kind of the big picture stuff. The other things that you look at and you're like, ooh, I don't know about that. The XG is not huge for someone who has played as many striker minutes as he has. I would go as far as to say it's actually very low. 21st percentile, a little bit higher on the McClockbot model. Shot volume, very low for a striker. It was much higher under De Zerbi. Brighton were much better under De Zerbi than they were under Hurtzler. He did not have a great season. I don't think he had a great year with the way they wanted to play, and I think their attack was pretty garbage for a lot of the year. He's an awkward profile. He's a striker whose best skills are not striker things. I think a good comp for him is someone like Kai Havertz, who I love, and we'll talk about. He's less strikery than Havertz, though. Havertz has significantly more striker output than Joao Pedro does. But yeah, strong chance creation, inconsistent shot output. If we look at things like Davies, which compare him to other players in his age and possession and position range, he is like about average per 90, but he plays. He's kind of middle of the pack for his age and role. His previous season, again, under Zerbi, looked much better. Again, the places that he kind of pops, a lot of final ball, a lot of dribbles and carries, he's slightly above average. If we look and compare directly season to season, the 23-24 version of Joao Pedro, a lot more shooting value, a lot more box activity value, looks way better. Way, way better. And I would bet, not a huge amount of money, but I think it's a reasonable take to say I suspect that he will look better at Chelsea than he did at Brighton. We'll talk about how Chelsea have made a lot of bets this year about players who should look better at Chelsea than they did at their previous club, and they're not paying fees that line up with those bets, but that's neither here nor there. Um, so if we start again, he's an attacking player. He's a 9. He's a 10. He's a winger. And we look at the shooting value and the shooting stuff. A couple things stand out. One, all of these gray hexagons, those are blocked shots. That's a lot of blocked shots. Like he takes 42 shots and something like a third of them get blocked. That's really bad. Even if when we looked at Gyökeres and Ekitike and Sesko and Delap, like those guys were all like sub 25%. He's like above 30%. That's a lot of block shots, which is bad. The other is that there's not a lot of like high value stuff in there. He finished most of his high value stuff, but when you look at his historical goal tallies, there's a lot of penalties, a lot of penalties, and the Straight Outta Common podcast like made the point. I can't remember the guy's name. Was talking to one of the Athletic writers who's a Brighton fan, and he was like, "Well, he won the penalties," and it's like I don't care. That's a different skill to evaluate. So when you look kind of historically, he's a slightly negative finisher. He's like four goals behind his xG. He was about in line last year. Some of the things that I do like, he's quite good in the air. He takes a reasonable number of headed shots. He's not afraid to shoot with his left foot. Like he's reasonably two-footed. His right-footed shots are about half of his total shot value, which is like a good place to be. Being two-footed as a shooter is something I have come to value more and more over time. But I don't think the shooting grades very well. Like if we watch the video, you'll see a lot of what I mean. So like the first positive thing is like he is legit good in the air. This is a real skill for him. His timing to attack leaps is very good. He's a great profile. His footwork to set himself up to jump is very good. He's very good at getting himself like space to run and attack things. He turns a lot of like floated nothing crosses into like not amazing but decent chances on goal. The heading stuff is real. And I think when you think about what Chelsea want out of this player, a lot of times this player, so if he is a left half space player, a lot of times this player is the extra player going into the box. Like how often have we seen Enzo Fernandez attacking crosses or attacking whatever, arriving as that back post player? You can imagine the situation where like Palmer shows low and you have a striker and Joao Pedro is like the second guy in the box. And you can imagine how much more valuable he would be in that role than either Marc Cucurella, who scored a decent number of goals doing that last season. But like, I'd much rather have Joao Pedro in that position than Marc Cucurella, or Jadon Sancho last season. The blocked shots thing is unfortunately also very real. He really struggles to create separation on the dribble. Like he's good at open field dribbling and like going past people, but when he gets into the box, his ability to shift is okay. Like he can create the yard, but his release to actually shoot is so slow that he just gets blocked so often. Where like he is really swinging at it, and you just get a lot of stuff that's like, this is gonna get blocked, or this is not gonna be that dangerous a moment. I think one of the things that I would really like to see him lean into is more of this stuff, where he is like connecting and then spinning in behind. His movement to go in behind is pretty good, but he's very fast, but he's not quick. He like needs a yard or two to get up to speed, and then he's very good. And so one of the things that I think you would really like to see with him is movements along the line and then in behind, rather than kind of reacting to passes in behind. But like this is a decent chance he doesn't finish it. Here's another one, like creates pretty good separation in dodgy moments. He is very good at kind of creating stuff out of nothing. He has a similar quality to Ekitike in that like he thrives on loose balls and knockdowns and like under hit passes that he just like turns into dangerous moments because he's like, oh, and just sniffs it out. And these aren't like amazing, but it's just like he's turning kind of garbage moments into stuff. That is a very real quality of his game. And I think you kind of look at the squad that Chelsea are building in between him and Delap and Jackson. You have like a few guys who are like they will garbage collect and like do useful things off of garbage collecting. Um, but I think ultimately like the actual shooting things is not very good. The volume is way too low for someone who's going to play some, but not a ton of minutes as a nine. I suspect he'll play more as a winger, but even as a winger, the shot volume is very low. That's a thing that like I'd be keeping a very close eye on. Is like, can you get him up to like 3 shots a game, and not just by taking more garbage out here? Like, can you get him more headers at the back post? Can you get him more arriving for cutbacks? That sort of thing. I think the place that he really shines is as a passer. So if you look at his progressive pass map from McClockbot, so the light ones here are completed, the green ones are cutbacks, the dark ones are negatives. 50-50 on completing or not completing progressive passes. That's a little low for his pass profile, but I think his selection of passes very good. He also is like slightly above his expected pass completion based on the XY of what he's passing. So like maybe my intuition is wrong that it feels low, but it feels a little bit low. The thing that really shines to me in the video and in the data is he is excellent at slipping people. Whether that's transition passes, whether that's he has dribbled and drawn pressure to slide someone, whether that's he has dribbled inside and gotten the 2v1 with an overlapping fullback, or more particularly relevant to Chelsea, is he dribbles inside from wide areas and the 8 or 10 makes the channel run. That is a thing that was very common at Maresca's Leicester. It is a thing that we have seen much more at the Club World Cup than we did last season. It was a thing that I didn't really understand not being there that much last season. And you can imagine if Palmer is the 10 and Joao Pedro is the winger that you can get there, or if it's Cucurella inverting to get to that spot, those slips are really, really valuable. When you compare him to other strikers, so this is only his forward minutes, all forwards in the Premier League greater than 900 minutes, he is by far the highest in terms of XA, and he is second highest in terms of passes into the penalty area. Chelsea were an excellent team at generating field tilt last year, and they had trouble turning that field tilt into high-quality box entries. This is a good skill to have, and I think among the other players that we'll talk about in like the tweener left winger 10 role, he is a significantly better passer than, or at least I should say a significantly better chance creator than Joao Felix, and also probably Christopher Nkunku. So that I think really, really shines. And if you look at the video, it's a very consistent kind of pass that Chelsea don't really have. And Palmer is really the only player who plays this pass. So one, he's like pretty good at hitting the cross to the back post. Like step inside, in swinger to the back post winger. He hits it a few times. He's pretty good at it. Where he really pops is like this stuff. Receive on the half turn, roll a guy because you're huge and you're fast and you're strong, and then slip dudes in behind with like pretty good weight of pass. You have another one here. He plays with Batoma. Great little reverse pass. Like this is the only player who really, like Jadon Sancho was pretty good at these passes, but was also such a zero at everything else that like it didn't really matter because he was never a threat to go himself, that it didn't ever pop. But this, I think, replacing that skill set as a passer, which Jamie Gittins does not, I think is quite nice to have. And you see a lot of stuff. Very eager to get in behind. His like passing risk tolerance, if you compare to Sancho, where like Sancho, I think Grant DeSchmidt, who's a very good follow, had a really good piece of analysis about Jadon Sancho playing line breaking passes. And I think one of the things with Sancho is that Sancho was such a good passer that I actually would have liked him to be significantly more risk tolerant. So if you can imagine the situation of the winger has the ball, whether it's Pedro or Jadon Sancho, like the value of you completing this pass here to Cucurella is really high. Like you should be much, and the risk is very low because if you turn it over, this is an awesome counter pressing moment. Like it's not dangerous if you give it up here. Being much more willing to play these slips and much more aggressive with these slips and reverse passes is like very, very plus EV in terms of plus expected value in terms of the risk reward of those kinds of passes. You can see again, he gets like really good weight on the pass. Another really, really well timed and really well weighted slip. Like if I rewind, this is like Chelsea wingers don't play this pass. They play that pass all the time. And that's like a tremendously valuable pass to play to get into depth here for purposes Stupinian. Again, like he's very, very good. Like, can I look to slip people into depth? And the weight of pass on it is pretty good. And we see it pretty constantly. Like, I think guys like Madueke are going to, if Madueke is still around, are going to feast. And again, here's another one, like diagonal dribble inside. Estupinian breaks the line and like just fluffs it, but it's a really, really well weighted pass. Plays a short corner, terrific slip in. Like these are not, they're not technically difficult to execute passes, but getting the weight and the timing right is really impressive. And then he just does like some cool stuff with random things. I think the passing is very legit. And in the NBA, they talk about like they're much more willing to talk about skills as like distinct parts of a player's game. Like players shoot and they pass and they dribble and they defend. And those are like the four things you do as an NBA player. And then there's like some stuff about off-ball movement, but it's much more like these are the distinct parts of players' games. But in football, we don't really talk about players that way. Like we talk about their skills to an extent, but like if you have a player who's very technically gifted, they often get described as like a good passer or a good dribbler, even if they're not actually good at those things. Or if they're a good ball striker because they hit nice long passes, it's like, oh, they're a good shooter, but they're not. It's a very different skill, even though it's still ball striking. And so I think when you think about Joao Pedro, if you like break him into his component parts, I think the passing is tremendously valuable. And I think Chelsea as a team are probably a little bit light on attacking third passing. I think they're very heavy on defensive third and middle third progressive passing. I think basically all of the defenders are above average for their, except for maybe Fofana, are above average for their position as ball progressors. I think of all of the midfielders, every single one except for Dario Asugo is way above average as a progressor for their position. Maybe Andres Santos isn't way above, but Lavia, Caicedo, Enzo, Ugochukwu, whoever, like those guys all move the ball forward, whether by dribble or by pass. And Cole Palmer is really the only guy in the final third who like moves it from the final third into the box. And then it's a lot of guys who cross, or it's Sancho kind of. And now you have Gittins who will dribble it in. Joao Pedro will talk about the dribbling, but I think the passing stuff from Joao Pedro is going to be pretty valuable. The dribbling stuff is weird. Open field, the dude moves the ball. Like if you think about dribbling as a skill or carrying as a skill, there are like two components. There is like open field zone moving, progressive carries. Like I take the ball from the edge of my defensive third to the final third. Chelsea have a lot of that. Like Pedro Neto is not a particularly progressive dribbler in terms of moving into the box, but he is pretty good about getting you field position. The same is true of a lot of Chelsea's players. Joao Pedro is very good at that thing. He is very good at receive half turn and get you 30 yards higher up the pitch, very consistently. The carries into the penalty area stuff is a little bit harder to evaluate. So on the left here, you have his center forward percentile ranks, and on the right, you have his attacking midfielder winger percentile ranks. So if you look at like the dribbling stuff, as a 9, you're like, oh my God, look at this guy. He carries the ball so much. He's such a dribbler. 90% successful take-ons, 4 take-ons a game, 3 progressive carries, 2 into the final third, 1.5 into the penalty area. These are all north of 90%. Big green bars. Oh my God, he's so good. But he only played like 55, 58% of his minutes as a 9. The other 40% he played as a winger or a 10 or a second striker, where he actually had a lot of dribbling onus. And when you grade him against those players, the dribbling numbers are much more pedestrian. His take-on success rate is very low. His carry numbers are a little bit lower. His turnovers, both miscontrols and dispossessions, are very high. This is the thing that makes me nervous, is a lot of the way Chelsea want to play is predicated on not turning the ball over that often. And so while I praised his ability to, his risk tolerance as a passer, because like I said, you can imagine the risk on this slip pass is very low. But the risk if you dribble inside here and get turned over, that now both of you are out of the play and they're going, is much higher, right? Like that is a much less favorable situation to turn the ball over in. And it's why when you think about like how Pep has set up City, it is very clear like who is allowed to attempt 1v1s and who is not. And while City had a down year, like mitigating transition risk has been like the theme of the past couple years. And so I think that is a thing you have to be fairly mindful of, is that like the guy does turn it over a lot. Like even if we go back to the original one, like he is very, very low for turnovers, 28th percentile for turnovers. Like that is bad. But the dribbling stuff is very fun to watch. And one of the things that I think is useful about his dribbling stuff is that because he's quite a dangerous passer, he leverages other players for his dribbling pretty well. Some of the things that I think like he doesn't do well, he has one move, so to speak, and not that this is like FIFA Street, you need 5-star skills, whatever. His only thing to go past people is like drop the shoulder, drag touch to your left. It is very similar to Liam Delap, if you recall, that it is like maybe a step over, and then I am taking a big touch to my left foot, and I'm going to try and pace you. It's like the only thing he does. And you can see, like, I think this is against Brentford, like, even against slow, not fast defenders, if they just like read the situation, you're not getting anything from them. And he's just like a little bit loose with it. He doesn't turn some of them into amazing things. What he does do a good job of is like he's very, very strong. And if you get a body on him, like he will roll you and he will shrug you off and he will go past you. That is very much a real thing. Where someone like Gittins or Doku or a lot of the players you would think of as like 1v1 dribbling specialists are Nani Madueke are very much about like, I'm going to stop your feet. I'm going to square you up so you can't move. And then I'm going to burst you. Joao Pedro is very much not that. He is, we're going to run and I'm going to be faster than you. And if you get a body on me, we're going. He absolutely rinsed Thomas Partey in that Arsenal game. The stuff that he's very good at, like I said, is the zone moving dribbling. Where like he's going to roll people and I'm going to turn us from the edge of our third to the attacking third. I'm going to get us from the edge of our third into the attacking third. And I'm faster and stronger than you. And that's what it's going to be. I'm going to get us in transition and we're going to go, 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 go. This is the one, if you remember, he cuts it back to Carlos Baliba. Baliba skies it. Again, uses his passing as a really good tool here. Excellent through ball, which ends up in a goal for Brighton. Again, half space, middle third, into the final third. This one they get into the box, doesn't turn into anything, but it's a nice moment. Rolls a guy. Let's get into the final third. And this is actually a very lovely pass out of that. Like, it is very much middle third to final third, zone moving, carrying. And that stuff is useful. It's useful, but it's much less useful of getting it from here where Mitoma has the ball into the box. Like, that's one of the things you look at it and you're like, actually, Mitoma is probably the player Chelsea want as a left winger. As this like half space player, very valuable skill. I think one of the things we saw with Chelsea as they progressed throughout the season was that when Marc Cucurella was this player against teams who are a little bit more organized defensively, him getting this is not at all dangerous when he's in this pocket because he's not a threat to turn and create anything. And for the many flaws that Joao Felix and Christopher Nkunku had, like, Chelsea were better when Joao Felix was in that role because actually he will turn. And he might not play the slip, but he will turn you and he will create something from it. And whether that's Palmer or it's Sancho in that pocket, like having someone in there who can receive on the edge of the block and then be incisive through the block, I think is tremendously valuable. The last part that I want to talk about is the defensive stuff. Because I think his rep as a defender is probably better than it should be. So if you look, he does try. He's like pretty active for strikers in terms of like tackles attempted. He's pretty active in terms of interceptions. He's pretty active in terms of passes blocked. He wins a lot of his aerials. You'll see he's a very good set piece defender. That you'll see he's like excellent, like very much Fernando Torres, Didier Drogba near post. I'm going to win the first one guy. Very valuable skill set to have. Chelsea have not had that player last season. Their defensive record on set pieces improved a lot. But it was mostly by virtue of reducing the number of corners faced. And part of that was they did not have a good player for that role. They did not have that, like, I am going to win the first ball guy. Unless they had Tosin playing head on stick ball. The things that worry me, he gets a lot of bookings and a lot of them are really dumb. And I don't really care about yellows because Chelsea are going to run a pretty big squad next year. So, like, I don't care if you take 10 yellows and get suspended. It doesn't really bother me. What I do worry about is, like, he will take red cards for trying to elbow dudes in the head for no reason. Like, that is definitely a thing that happens. And that worries me. He also wins lots of penalties. He gets fouled a lot, which is a good skill to have. But defensively, let's just watch the video because it's hard to break it down from the stats. So the two things that stand out the most to me. One, he tries hard, but his angles are pretty bad. Like, he's very willing to apply pressure. If I go back to the stats bomb stuff, scores very highly in terms of possession adjusted pressures. He's very active, but his angles are pretty bad. So he ends up a lot of times, like here, he's clearly curving his run to force one way, which is no problem. But he comes in so much that he just gets dribbled past and has to like push and foul from behind. If he takes a slightly better angle here, like still curves, but like stops his feet a little bit earlier, he's probably poking this ball to Adingra to go. And like that's an amazing moment for Brighton. But his angle's a little bit wrong. He ends up giving away a foul. They didn't get anything. He's very willing to apply back pressure. So if he is past the ball, his willingness to come defend guys who are ahead of him is awesome. So good. Really good quality when he's playing as a 9, less frequent when he's playing as a 10 or a winger. But you can imagine if Chelsea are defending 4-4-2 and he's one of the 9s, like that's very useful. He has like quite good ability to poke and win things without fouling when he like gets to that spot where he will like wrap guys around from the wrong side and just like poke it and start transitions, which is really valuable. And again, he really does try and apply back pressure. Like the angles aren't always great, but he does legitimately try. The thing where he really shines as a defender for me, aside from the set piece defending, which we'll show, is he's so good at picking off passing lanes. Like this is off the kickoff against Fulham. Like you should not be able to intercept that pass. Here's like a slightly under hit one. He turns that into a big pressure turnover. Another slightly under hit one, turns it into a turnover. When he's defending as a winger in the block, he very regularly picks off passes to start transitions the other way. He's just got like very long legs and like will gamble on interceptions, which can be a negative thing. But he's long enough that he win stuff. It's very like him and Palmer are somewhat similar in that way. But he very regularly will pick passes off, and again he's very good defending high balls. But like under hit stuff, he absolutely, if you play a back pass too short, he will chase it the same way Jackson does, which is valuable. This one is maybe my favorite clip in the whole defensive package, because my favorite here is so he is the left winger for Brighton here. He's super narrow, taking the weak side midfielder, right? Like this is like pretty normal stuff. And what I love here is Kovacic turns inside, and he's just like, I'm going to spy. I'm going to spy. Am I going to jump this to the center back? Am I going to stay? And just watch him play halfway between. I'm going to jump or I'm going to stay with Bernardo Silva. Half, I'm going to jump. I'm going to play with Bernardo Silva. And then it's like, oh, actually, I start the counter because I didn't cheat. There's another one. This is the last one, and then I'll go back and play this at piece clips. I should have moved this in order. Here's another one. He's the weak side winger. Nope, I spied it. Transition for me. Foul. Just because he's you can exactly think about where he would be. He's on the weak side, if they play into the midfield, they're going to go. The exact same as the clip before this. And he's just actually, no, you underhit this. I will start the counter. And that, I think, is very valuable. And then, yeah, the set piece stuff. If you put him as the first guy, he will go win the ball. He's tall. He's good in the air. He's got a very good leap. He's got very good timing. Wins a good number of his aerial duels. He will do that. Even whipped lower balls, he will slide and block. And that, I think, is again, a skill Chelsea have lacked. Nico Jackson is not very good at that. He is not Torres or Drogba or Diego Costa, who were, legitimately good front post set piece defenders. So that's my kind of defensive things. I don't think he's as good a presser as the data would suggest, just by the number of pressures he applies, but he's very active. He tries very hard. And when he's in the block, he's very good at intercepting passes, and he's very good picking off loose ones. Those are good qualities to have as a defender. I don't think he's a superstar defender, but there's something there for sure. So as a player, I'm into it. I think he does a lot of things that are useful. I think he's a very good passer. I think he creates for other players. I think he's good enough defensively to hang. I think he's a good box presence. As a squad player in isolation, I'm left wing 10-9 tweener, guy you need to fill this role. I think it's an okay deal. Where it comes down to is the bigger context. And this is the thing with a lot of the Clear Lake deals and a lot of Chelsea's recruitment over the past couple of years is I can look at it and say, I like the player. And then I look at it and say, I don't like the money. And that is very much true for this year. Joao Pedro had a down year. He did not have a good season last year. Yes, you had Newcastle there who were offering similar money. And no, Brighton don't have to sell. But I'm not giving them full freight on this deal. I'm not paying 55 plus 5. That's just not the number I'm coming up to for this player who's not a starter for me, who starts occasionally. If you made me project his Premier League minutes next year, it would be 1,600. Something like that. 1,800, maybe 2,000. He's not playing 35 games for me. And so I look at the fee and I'm like, ugh. You project his wages out at $5.2 million a year. That's double what he's making at Brighton. That's the number that I've just eyeballed it at. I think that's a reasonable number. It's probably going to be a little bit higher because of Champions League. I think those wages are fine for that player. But when I put this in the bigger context of players who play left wing 10, spot 9, you have Joao Felix, who you paid 42.4 plus £4 million for. You have Christopher Nkunku, who you paid £52 million for. And you have Raheem Sterling, who you paid £48 million for. That's £150 million for players who are vaguely a similar role. And then you look at the wages. All of these players are still on Chelsea's books. That's £7 million for Felix. That's £10 million for Nkunku. That's £17 million for Raheem Sterling. That is £34 million a year, plus the amortization on the fees. It is, and I think the amortization on the fees, if you do the math, is something like another $30 million a year. It is £60 million a year for this position, and you don't want any of these players. And that's fine. That's your prerogative. I think financially you probably could have been smarter about this and like keeping one of them because they're all kind of fine. But like, you haven't moved any of them yet. And now, not only, you don't even have the option now to say like, actually, maybe we, like it's the end of August. We moved Felix. We didn't move Nkunku and Sterling. Like, maybe we just buy Sterling out and we keep Nkunku for another year. Like, maybe we do that. That's not an option anymore. You have too many players that all do the same thing and way too much money. Way too much money. Like, if you include Joao Pedro, you have £40 million attached to one position. That's like a middle of the championship roster for one position. And so I look at that and I'm like, it's going to be real hard to move these guys. You didn't give yourself any outs. And in that context, I'm like, man, I don't love the deal. So I put it as like the player is a B. It's a B transfer. I don't think he's amazing. I think you look at the fee for this and Gittins, and I'm like, well, why not just go buy Barcola for $100 million? Like, you could do that for the same wages, probably, as the two players combined. But fine, as a player, B player, B transfer, no problem. Fee, too much. Don't like it. I'd put the pricing at like a C minus. I think it's just too much. And then in the greater context, it's an F. And so my like transfer grade would probably be a low C. It's fine. It's middle of the road. Like, it's not great. Like a lot of Chelsea transfers is not great. You can see the motivation, but it's not a deal I would have done. I hope I'm wrong. I hope he's amazing. I hope he scores 20 goals a season, blah, 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 blah. But I think it's not a deal I would have done. Let me know what you think in the comments, or hit me up or whatever. Chelsea play Friday against Palmeiras. Man City just lost to Al Hilal, so there are now no European teams on Chelsea's side of the bracket, presumably setting up a fairly easy route to the final, which would be a lot of money and which would be a cool thing. But they lost to Flamengo. They could lose to Palmeiras. They could lose to Al Hilal. You never know. But a very, very solid set of opponents, I guess. I don't even know where I was going with that. But anyways, that's my take. Let me know what you think about Joao Pedro. I suspect this will be announced tomorrow, probably within a few hours of me putting this video out. I suspect Gittins will be similar. Joao Pedro is joining for the Club World Cup. I don't think he'll really play. I'd bet maybe he gets a sub appearance, but I would be pretty surprised if he actually played. Like if he started a game, for example. But you never know. Anyways, that's all for me. As always, enjoy the soccer.